Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zither, back with part 3 to What If Deku Had Microbots. Now, I know you guys definitely smashed the like button on the last part, meaning that I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a treat today. So, you guys better be hyped for this. But that being said, let's go ahead and get into this recap and then get started. Last part, we'd essentially left off with the quirk apprehension test, the heroes versus villains arc, and the USJ attack with Deku and May actually ending it off being pretty, both okay. And Deku and May would actually get a 2-week break from UA. They would actually get a 2-week break this time, delaying the UA Sports Festival by just a little bit, but it was still a big thing. So anyways, like I said, UA Festival was delayed 2 weeks, so they have 2 weeks, okay? During this time, Deku and May would actually take advantage of this time to do a lot of things. Number one, they would develop a little bit of a closer friendship, if you get what I mean. Friendship in quotation marks. With Deku and May actually creating Baymax. Yeah, I know. A lot of you guys were asking me to give Deku Baymax, so I figured, you know what? They're gonna do it. Now, the way that it happened was Deku was thinking of creating a robot for himself, somebody who could help him out with the villains. But May actually suggested, how about somebody who could help you out with villains and would be good at healing people? Deku would actually be very, very, very intrigued by this and would have actually ended up creating Baymax, the original design as he had in the Big Hero 6 movie. No, at this point he actually wouldn't have the armor yet. That would be later on. But yeah, during this time, Deku and May actually would have upgraded the microbots, with Deku having a chip implanted into his neck that controls his thoughts to control the microbots, and upgraded the microbots to be magnetic so that they can't be lost, so they can always return to him, and made the microbots have elemental attacks such as lightning, water, and fire. And he also had actually went up to May one day when they were building and asked her if, how she felt about him. May would have actually looked at him and been like, what do you mean? Deku's like, oh, he, just touches both of his fingers together. He's like, and May would be like, oh, you want to know how I feel about you? As Deku would be like, yeah. Now May would get close to him, put her hand on his chest, and then say, get like really close and for a kiss, and then miss his face and say, I'll tell you after the sports festival if you win. As Deku's just like, oh, I really thought. And May just starts laughing as they both basically end up keep inventing things for that entire 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks, as you guys can tell, were put to very, very, very great use. Now, this is when they would arrive at the UA festival. As soon as they get there, as soon as they get there, Deku was told that he has to give out the speech. And Deku would proceed to walk up there and proceed to give a very inspirational speech talking about how anybody can become an amazing hero. They just have to think outside the box and do things not the traditional way. It doesn't matter what quirk you have or if you're quirkless, you can become a hero. And Deku would proceed to preach on that. Now, everybody in the stands would be like, yeah, I like this kid. Some people would be like, can't become a hero without a quirk, as Deku would say, and I'm gonna prove it today. My quirk is super intelligence, and I am gonna win. As all of the other classes would be like, you're not gonna win, we're gonna win, this kid sucks, type shit. And Deku would basically walk off the stand and go up to May as he kind of fist bumps her, and he's like, and Bakugo walks up to him, he's like, hey, Deku, I just wanted to say I couldn't have done that better myself. As Bakugo just walks away and he's like, as the race then starts. Now, as soon as the race gets announced, Deku proceeds to have his microbots come out of his capsules that he creates, and he creates a lot of them. Now, as soon as they appear, they begin to go under people's feet and all just gather up in a small place. It creates wings on his back, and this one Midnight would proceed to say, go! As Deku blasts off with the giant attack of wind off of the wings, and he would begin to fly off as May begins to use one of her jetpacks as well as her 4 tentacles on her back to basically catch up to Deku. She's basically using her jetpack to fly into the air and using her tentacles to try to get Deku out of the air, while Deku's basically going full throttle for the finish line. Todoroki, however, he's not letting that happen, and Todoroki creates an ice geyser and decides to go towards the air, as he's basically right behind Deku and Mei. That's when Bakugo says, "Don't count me out," as he begins to use his explosions to get very, very close to them. Now they're in like a four-way tie, and they're all going up against each other. But this is when Deku would proceed to have his microbots get off of them and go and attack everybody separately. He would have Bakugo get attacked by a giant burst of water, destroying the sweat and the explosion off of his hands, making him fall to the ground. He would actually catch him with his microbots, and Bakugo wouldn't actually get hurt. Now for Todoroki, Deku would break the ice that he has behind him, having him levitated, so Todoroki would proceed to fall. And this is when Deku would actually give Todoroki some wings so that he can land safely. Todoroki would get angry and be like, "Damn it! Ugh! This bastard is always one step ahead." As Deku's just like, "I guess." And he's flying. Now this one, Mei would actually use one of her tentacles and it would grab onto Deku's leg as she throws him back, and Deku's like, "Whoa!" And he has his microbots catch him in midair and slingshot him right in front of Mei. This is when they get on top of the little area that has the endless fall, and Deku would proceed to play no games. He would have his microbots create a really bouncy trampoline, and he would bounce on it, shooting him straight past the mines, straight past the messed up terrain, and he would actually end up getting first place. Second place would be Mei, third Todoroki, fourth Bakugo. So that's basically how that's going to end up playing out. Now, for the next thing, the cavalry battles. Yes, the cavalry battles. In terms of the cavalry battles, Deku would have actually teamed up with Mei, not because Mei was trying to, get some clout off this man's, his dick, but because Mei actually wants his. Anyways, he would also end up getting Dark Shadow on the team, as well as Uraraka, because they're pretty cool friends. Now, this is when the whistle would get blown, and Deku would immediately create a microbot dragon, a sort of let's go with I don't know, just a fairy tale looking dragon in the air, and they would begin to fly up in the air as the dragon flaps its wings, and it creates massive wind pressure at the ground. Now it would get into a decent height in the air to the point where nobody else could reach them, and they were still in the arena. They'd be flapping the wings as Todoroki and Bakugo look at that and then say, "I'm gonna take it down." Todoroki begins to use his ice to have his team go far into the air. As soon as he gets close, he would begin to shoot a fire attack at the dragon, trying to melt the microbots, knowing that if he wants to beat this kid, he can't be holding back, and he would have actually let it slip his mind that he's using his fire. So Todoroki would actually use it and then realize, "No, I'm gonna beat him with nothing but my ice." As he begins to use his ice, and Deku, he's just like, "Okay," as he shoots a fire attack at Todoroki, almost burning his team. But Todoroki would have created an ice wall in front of him and would have actually decided to retreat, that he can't fight against him because Deku has the upper ground. Bakugo would come in out of nowhere, using his explosions to fly in the air and try to fight Deku on this huge dragon, but Deku would not be having any of it. He would have his dragon kind of slash at Bakugo, and one of the slashes would have actually caught Bakugo off guard. Would have left a huge gash on Bakugo's chest, leaving a 3 claw marks, like a scratch. Bakugo would go straight towards the ground, but he would actually catch himself on an explosion and land right back on his team. For the remainder of the thing, Bakugo and Todoroki decided to just stay in each other's lanes and decide to take out the other participants to get easy points, thinking that they'll just have their revenge in the tournament bracket. Now, this is when the race would end. Deku's team would actually end up winning, Todoroki second and Bakugo third. This is when the first match would be announced. Deku versus Shinso. Now, Deku versus Shinso would actually play out a lot differently. Ojiro would walk up to Deku and try to warn him about Shinso's capabilities, with Deku kind of just being like, "Okay, I understand." This is when Deku would actually look at Shinso, to which Shinso just kind of stares at him and he just smiles. The match would get announced. Shinso and Deku would arrive at the stadium, and this is when Deku would actually decide that he's going to take him out as quickly as possible. As soon as the whistle gets blown, Shinso said, that's a pretty cute girl you have there. it'd be a shame if something happened to her, to which Deku just stays quiet and he gets angry. He has his microbots build up into like a giant fist on his hand as he's about to punch Shinso, and Shinso then says, must be nice to have an amazing quirk like yours. As Deku's like, what the hell do you... As he then is mind controlled. The microbots fall onto the ground, and Deku's just in his mindscape, just, no, I can't lose. As he just can feel his body moving. Deku's just thinking, no, this is not... As he begins to have his will on the microbots, he would begin to really think hard about it and have like the microbots basically whip him out of it. The microbots would create a sort of whip, and it would whip Deku right on the back, knocking Deku back into consciousness, and Deku would realize what's going on. This is when he would immediately create a giant tsunami which would rush at Shinso, with Shinso having nothing and no way to dodge it, and he would take over Shinso and take him outside of the arena. Deku would proceed to step outside, and this is when Shinso says, must be nice to have such an amazing quirk. As Deku says, this isn't my quirk. I made these. I'm in the general studies. I'm in the support course. As Shinso's just like, that anime thing. Now this one, Deku would tell him that they should spar again, and Shinso's like, whatever, I guess I'll do it. Now, next match. Todoroki versus Deku. Now, I'm just not even going to go ahead and get into any previous jibber jabber. Todoroki would basically walk up to him, be like, I declare war, Izuku, as the match would start. Todoroki would shoot a giant geyser at him, but Deku would create a giant buzzsaw to cut straight through it and destroy the buzzsaw. This one, Deku would actually have a huge tsunami rise up into the air that would be coated in fire, which would come right at Todoroki. But Todoroki would use a giant ice geyser, the biggest one, as it melts, as the fire is melting right through the ice. And Todoroki would decide that he has to go into the air. He would proceed to go a little bit into the air so that if he falls, it wouldn't be deadly. And Deku proceeds to create wings as he tries to fight Todoroki in the air. He would actually knock Todoroki off, but Todoroki would catch himself with a bit of ice. Now, this one, Todoroki would actually decide to rush at Deku right into the air without Deku realizing. He would basically begin to shoot sharp icicles from his hands, as he would have actually used the 2 weeks to train on that, and Deku would pick up on that and block it with his microbots. The microbots would do exactly what Gaara does, and this one, Deku would decide that he needs to take him out quickly before he actually becomes a threat. This one, Todoroki would begin to freeze some of the microbots into place, freezing them so much that they couldn't move anymore. Deku would actually be caught off guard, and this is when Deku wouldn't actually have too many microbots to depend on anymore. He would drop a capsule that would release a lot of microbots, and they would begin to creep up behind Todoroki. One of them would grab his legs, and they would surround his body as they wrap him up in a sort of symbiote way. And as that's happening, Todoroki's face is all that's left. He's like, stop! As Deku then says, give up. As Todoroki says, I won't give up. As Deku starts crushing his hand as the microbots start crushing slowly, and Todoroki's like, as he then passes out from the pain, not yielding to Deku, and Deku's surprised by everything that he had done. Now this is when Deku would actually reveal Baymax, and Baymax would come out and heal Todoroki's injuries. After this, Todoroki would go to the recovery girl, and he would have his healing sped up, while Bakugo and Deku would be up next. Mei would have actually been defeated by Bakugo. Uraraka would have lost, and Deku would have had it out for Bakugo, since that's his lady. You don't do that to her. Now, as soon as Deku got into the match with Bakugo would have said, nice. This time we're not in an enclosed area, and I'm not limited with my attacks. Deku would say, what are you talking about? As Bakugo says, the only reason you won last time was because we were in an enclosed area. You got lucky. That's all it was. As Deku says, is that so? As soon as the match starts, Deku would have microbots create a giant room around them that would trap them inside of a giant box filled with microbots. And Bakugo would say, damn you, Deku, as he rushes at him and says, I hate you. And he tries to attack Deku with a lot of bloodlust behind every attack, saying, how dare you have gotten this wrong? It was me and you left me. And you left me alone. You stopped caring about me. Why was it? Why did you do this, Izuku? As Deku's like, I didn't leave you, Bakugo. As he's dodging all of his attacks and striking back as they begin to yell at each other. Bakugo says, yes, you did. After your brother died, you begin to stray away from me for some reason. Why'd you do it, Deku? As Bakugo then says, we were best friends. What happened? As Deku says, I didn't leave you, Bakugo. I had to do it for my brother. I wanted to become a hero, and at that time you were more of a villain than a hero. As Bakugo would be like, ugh. And Deku would be like, and that's why I stopped. As Bakugo would say, yeah, well, it doesn't matter anyway, since I'm gonna defeat you this time. And Bakugo says, and this time, I'll destroy you to the point where you can't walk anymore. As Deku gets scared by that, and Deku decides that he can't play around with Bakugo. They would get into a fierce hand-to-hand combat battle with Deku surrounding himself with the giant with the armor that he'd done from last time. So when Bakugo would say, that trick won't work anymore, as he shoots a giant explosion at Deku, which catches him off guard a lot, and Deku gets caught off, and the explosion actually bursts a hole straight through the Microbot wall. He's about to hit the grass when suddenly the Microbots catch him in midair, and they shoot him right back at Bakugo to throw in a fierce punch. Bakugo would get sent into the wall, and he would create a crater in it. His body would come out as he explodes into the air and says, Deku! As Deku says, Bakugo! And they rush at each other with their strongest attacks. Bakugo using a howitzer impact, and Deku rushing at him using a fist that's covered in like his giant looking Susanoo. Yep, I'm doing it. For those of you who've been asking for it, I'm doing it. Deku would coat himself in a giant armor, a Susanoo looking like armor, and he would begin to rush at him as he says, Bakugo! And he rushes at Bakugo, and they clash, creating a giant explosion. This is when Deku would actually walk out victorious, and Bakugo would have been taken out. Deku would have only been using a sort of rib cage armor to protect himself from that, and Bakugo would have actually ended up being taken out by that. Bakugo would get second place, Todoroki would get third, Deku would get first place, ending the sports festival. As soon as it's over, he goes up to Mei and celebrates with her, as well as gets the medal from All Might. Bakugo, after the match, actually walks up to Deku and says, hey nerd, I guess I can understand why you strayed away from me. And Deku says, yeah, Bakugo, I'm sorry. As Bakugo says, nah, it's cool. I guess I just let it get to me a lot. That's been building up for over the years, and I always wanted to know what happened. As Deku says, well, we can try being friends again, right? And Bakugo says, yeah, I'd like that. As they go off, as Bakugo just leaves and says, how about we train together sometime? And Deku says, I'd like that, Bakugo. As now their friendship was rekindled to back when they were kids, except this time they won't be mischievous little brats. Now, in terms of afterwards, Deku would walk up to Mei and he would ask her, so, how do you feel about me? As Mei would begin to blush red and she would say, She would begin to look at him, and Deku would actually walk up to her, having her back against the wall as Deku says, well, if you won't tell me how you feel about me, I'll tell you how I feel about you. As he goes in for a kiss and they start making out in the hallway. This is when Uraraka actually walks by, and seeing this would actually have her face go red and at the same time feel a little bit uneasy. She wouldn't know what's going on. Is it jealousy? Is it like, whoa, like why did I just walk into that? Find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball. Just kidding. Now, this is when Deku and Mei would actually establish their relationship. Deku and Mei would begin to date at this point, and this is when they would arrive back to class. They would be told about their hero names. Now, this is when Deku would pick the name. Holy shit, what name would Deku pick? I haven't thought about this. Microman? Oh no, that's not it, Chief. Deku would pick the name of... Boys, I am so lost in terms of the name to give him. Boys, comment down below what name suggestions you guys have for Deku, and I'll be using the one that I like the most, as well as shouting you out in the next video. So, you know, I would do it if I was you. Anyways, in terms of that, they would actually then get told that they're actually going to be doing internships with some heroes. This one Deku would actually have a lot of offers, many, such as Hawks, Endeavor, Edgeshot, heroes such as that. Deku, being the first place winner, would have actually had the second most amount of recommendations, with Todoroki being first, since he is the son of Endeavor after all. Everybody would go to their original locations, with Mei actually deciding that she wants to learn combat training. So she would actually end up going with Gunhead as well. She would go with Gunhead. And she and Uraraka would actually end up developing a little bit of a friendship during that time. I'm getting into her because right now I'm about to get into the Stain arc, so don't worry. Now, anyways, this is when Deku would actually be told by All Might that he should actually internship with his old master, Gran Torino. Deku would ask who he is and what he can teach him, and All Might would ask him if he wants to have one for all. That's when Deku would say, I don't know. One part of me is telling me I should take it, but one part of me just doesn't know. As All Might tells him, tell you what, I won't hand it down until you give me a definitive answer. And yeah, guys, I'm still like battling my demons whether I should give him one for all or not. But I'm leaning towards no. So for those of you who want no, and for those of you who want yes, make sure to tell me why he should get it. You know, make sure to let me know why. I've read all your comments, so don't worry. I know what you guys think about this, what you guys want, and I'm definitely trying my best to do it. But this is hard, you know. Anyways, Deku would actually be going to Gran Torino's. When he arrives, he would see that Gran Torino's on the floor, laying in a pool of blood, or he thought. This one, Deku would take a closer look and see that it was just ketchup. Gran Torino would wake up and be like, as Deku would just be like, ketchup, huh? As Gran Torino's like, you're no fun, kid. As Deku's like, I guess. And Gran Torino introduces himself. He tells him his name is Torino. And Deku introduces himself as Izuku Midori. They'd begin to talk for a little bit, and this is when Deku would actually have a little bit of a good chat with Torino. He would begin to tell him that they're gonna be focusing on combat training, except no microbots. Deku's gonna be like, dude, like, that's my ability. Like, what do you mean no microbots? Like, excuse me? As Gran Torino would be like, exactly like you heard, no microbots. You can't use them. I want to see how far you could get in terms of, I want to make you stronger physically, not with those microbots. You can't always depend on them. As Deku understands, he nods his head and he then begins to say, alright, so how do we get started? As Gran Torino rushes him and he begins to kick him from all sides, as Deku's like, damn it. As Gran Torino begins to pummel on Deku, and Deku has no choice but to get beaten on by it. The entire time that he's going to be with Gran Torino is actually just going to get his ass beat, and he's going to learn a lot about combat. Deku's fighting ability is going to go up through the roof after this, and going to be a little bit more of a weird fighter, not a straight-on fighter. And Torino taught him that he needs to be he needs to be less obvious in terms of his moves, and Deku would have understood what he meant. So, that's it. Now, what happens next is, Deku and Gran Torino would actually decide to go into the city to do a little bit of a hero patrolling. Deku would put on his costumes as well as take 4 pods of microbots with him. This when they would be on the train and the gnome would rush at the bus as Deku opens the window and has all of his microbots fly out and catch the gnome before it could break in. This when Gran Torino would open the ceiling of the train and Torino as well as Deku would jump out, bursting out. And Torino would go straight for the Nomu as he tells him, wait here. And Deku says, I can't do that. You know I can't. This is when Deku would actually be following Torino into the city, but looking around to see if there's any danger that any other Nomus. This is when Deku would actually notice that Ida's there. He would see Ida in an alleyway on the ground about to get stabbed by a weird guy with a red outfit who looks like a killer. So when Deku would have a bunch of microbots around Ida as well as Native, and he would actually have Baymax get out. He would take them to a little bit of a far location and have Baymax treating them as Stain looks up and says, who are you? As Deku says, put your name here, the name that I picked next episode. And Stain says, interesting. You seem to be a real hero, but those two, they were not. And that's why they have to die. As Deku says, well, you have to get through me first. As Stain rushes him, and he then gets grabbed by his microbots. Stain gets flung backwards into a wall, creating a crater. As Stain is just like, he licks his sword and then begins to rush at Deku with weird angles, the way that Gran Torino was rushing at him. This time, Deku would have his microbots keeping up with Stain, but Stain would pick up the pace, and Stain would begin to outspeed the microbots before they could even protect Deku. Deku would have a little bit, Deku would actually have Stain get close to him, but then he would coat himself in the microbots, almost instantly defending him. So, He would activate the sort of ribcage microbot Susano, as he then begins to become a giant in the eyes of Stain. And Stain is just like, interesting. As he begins to rush at Deku, trying to attack him, maybe get some blood out of him to paralyze him and go get those other two fake heroes. As Deku begins to actually pummel on Stain and take him out very quickly. He shoots a microbot at him that actually has a net at the end of it that actually ends up trapping Stain. Stain gets taken out, and then Deku rushes in there and hits him with one of his strongest attacks, knocking Stain out permanently. This is when the heroes would arrive, such as Endeavor, Torino, and they would see the situation. This is when Stain would get up and be like, "You heroes are all fake. You're all fakers." As he has his normal thing happen in canon, but this time, when Deku gets approached by the bird, Deku would catch it midair and slam it onto the ground, and have one of the microbots create a giant fist, smashing the Nomu's head in, killing it instantly. And this is when Deku would actually have microbots creep up behind Stain, as Stain jumps up into the air, and Endeavor shoots a huge fire sphere at Stain, impaling him right in the leg, causing Stain's landing to falter. Now, as soon as he does, he lands and his ribcage hits. He gets knocked out. And that concludes the Stain arc. In terms of the little police dog guy, he would have actually told Deku that Endeavor's getting the credit, and Deku would actually be 100% okay with this, seeing that Deku is not one for the fame. He's a hero because he wants to be, and he wants to save people, just like his brother Tadashi. He's not in it for the money or the fame, but if that comes, so be it. Now, this is when Deku would actually arrive back at class, and this is when they would actually have the race. He would have the race. Yes, sir. They would have the race. Deku would arrive, see Mei, and he would be like, "Hey, Mei, so what you learned during your internship?" And if she, as well as Uraraka, who would appear behind her and be like, "Hey, Deku," she would begin to say, "Oh, I learned gunhead martial arts with Uraraka." As he's like, "Really? That's impressive." As Deku says, "I also learned to fight a little bit myself." As she says, "Oh, really? Well, I guess we might have to fight each other later on today." As she, blows a kiss at Deku and then just walks off to her arena that she's going to be racing in. Deku would proceed to go into the arena and be extremely happy as he begins to use his microbots to fly and blitz straight over to All Might. He would win the race with Sero coming second and the other two coming whoever cares. Nobody cares about them. This is when the finals would be told, and this is when Deku would actually ask Mei if she wanted to come over to his house to quote unquote study. Mei would actually be very inclined to do this, and she'd be like, "Oh, okay." As she would begin to blush a little bit, and she would begin to open the door to Deku's house. This one they would walk in, Deku thinking that nobody was home, and this one suddenly his mom's on the couch, just sitting there. As Deku's like, "Mom? Hey, Mom." As Mei's like, "Oh, hey." As Inko's like, "Huh. That's weird. I don't remember you telling me you were bringing girls over." As Deku's like, "Oh, yeah, this is Mei Hatsume, Mom. This is my girlfriend." As she's like, "Oh, you're Mei." As she would say, "Deku's told me all about you." As they would begin to talk to each other a little bit, and Deku would ask her if they could go to their room. She would be just fine with it, just telling him not to do nothing crazy, and Deku and Mei would proceed to go up to his room. They'd proceed to talk a little bit, and this is when they would actually proceed to make out for quite a little bit. They would actually make out for about 30 minutes before Deku actually thinks. He's like, "Wait, Mei, Baymax, what if I improved him? What if I had made him help me out on the battlefield?" As Mei would be like, "What do you mean?" And Deku would tell her exactly what he means. He would tell her his idea of having Baymax get a suit of armor, essentially a very sturdy material that's very light and very simple. Meaning he would actually change the Baymax design from flat to no. I'm not gonna change that at all. Baymax is gonna stay exactly the same as he was normally. And this is when what's it called? Deku would be like, "Okay, we are basically ready." As Deku would proceed to, just be chilling. And her as well as Deku would actually spend the entire night creating the armor for Baymax and implementing all the databases for how to fight in combat for every situation that could ever appear. He would upload the database of fighting styles of all of the best pro heroes as well as the best scenarios for what to do in every anything that happens. Deku and Mei would actually proceed to what's it called? Deku and Mei would proceed to afterwards kind of high five each other and be like, "You wanna go celebrate?" As Deku says, I don't know." As they go back to the room and Deku and Mei proceed to actually just make out for a little bit longer. I'm not gonna give you guys nothing crazy just yet. Now, this is when Deku and Mei would actually report back to class. They'd be told about their final exams. Deku and Mei would be like, final exams, huh? Sounds interesting. I'll bite." As they both look at each other and they're like, "You wanna take these now or later?" As they actually have the choice to take the fighting or the written. Deku and Mei would proceed to ace the written, and afterwards, Bakugo as well as Deku would proceed to have a fight against All Might. This fight is gonna go a little different than in canon, and Deku and Bakugo have actually made up this time. So when Deku suggests the idea of just escaping, Bakugo says he wants to fight him. Deku then proposes that what if they fight him, and if they can't take him out, they escape. To which Bakugo says, "I can live with that." Now afterwards, they would proceed to rush in there as All Might throws a smash into them. Deku would create a microbot wall which would block the impact, and when he takes it down, All Might would appear out of nowhere, punching Deku, or trying to at least, and it would be about 1 centimeter away from hitting his face before his microbots actually stopped him. Deku would be like, "Holy shit," as he has the microbots hold All Might into the air and have all of them create a giant, they would hold them prisoner. Think about Mr. Incredible. Oh, Mr. Incredible. I think we got another what if coming soon. What if Deku had something from the Incredibles movies powers? Comment down below who you would want, and I'm probably gonna be doing it around this month. So let me know if you guys would like to see that. If you guys wouldn't, I won't do it. But it's just for anybody who's still here. Let me know if you guys would actually like to see that. Anyways, this would be kind of like when what's called Mr. Incredible was held up on the ropes and he couldn't actually do anything. So Bakugo would proceed to say, "Perfect," as he jumps into the air and howitzer impacts All Might. After this, All Might would tank the blow and be like, "Ah!" As Bakugo and Deku proceed to attack on All Might, as All Might's just like, "Okay." As he gets beaten and bruised, and Deku then begins to say, "Okay, yeah, this is our teacher, we need to chill out." As All Might just coughs out blood, and Deku, before Bakugo could actually shoot another howitzer impact at Bakugo, Deku catches Bakugo midair and says, "We can't hurt him too bad." Says, "He's still our teacher after all." And Bakugo's just like, "Yeah, I guess you're right," as they wrap him up in the tape, and they end up winning it. In terms of that exam, they would have ended up winning. Now, this is where I'm actually going to be leaving it off for today, guys. If you guys want the next part, I'm going to need 100 likes. I'm going to need 100 likes. No exceptions. I'm going to need 100 likes on this part. And if I get let's say if I get 140 likes, I'll be covering the entire forest arc. I'll be covering the hero retrieval, the Bakugo retrieval arc, and I'll be covering the pro license arc. Matter of fact, if I get 140 likes, I'm going to have a full episode dedicated entirely to the forest arc, the hideout arc where they basically get Bakugo back, the license, and the overhaul arc. So if you guys want that, go ahead and smash 140 likes. No, that's a little bit of a crazy thing to ask for, but you guys are smashing these likes buttons, so I figure, might as well give you guys a little bit of a challenge. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much, guys, for 1K. But that being said, Zether out.